Well, though the war had at least temporarily appeared to unite Iranians, the government, for its part now, has embarked upon an internal crackdown. At least 6 people have been executed, with scores of others believed to have been arrested on allegations of spying for Israel or cooperating in other ways with its intelligence services. For more on this, we're going to cross down to Azadeh Pourzand, human rights researcher and spokesperson at Impact Iran. She is also a senior fellow and head of the State Society Relations Research Unit at the Center for Middle East and Global Order. Azadeh, thank you for joining us today. So can you tell us what more we know about these executions? Who were the people that were executed and what exactly are they accused of?
Thank you very much for having me and for covering this important topic. As your correspondent said, the situation is Iranians are trying to enjoy their lives, but as a fellow Iranian told me from inside Iran, they don't trust the sky anymore and they don't trust the ground as before. The Islamic Republic has done what it does best, which is it has started a campaign of collective punishment of its own people in response to what happened in those 12 days, meaning that as a regime that already had quite an alarming practice of executions, the fear of the human rights community, as evident also in these executions that you just said, is that they will accelerate these executions. And some of these some of the executions that we have seen, I mean, I think almost actually all of them are individuals who are already in prison during the war. So essentially accelerating the machinery of executions of even the people who were already on the death row before, for a variety of securitized charges that includes things like espionage, or what we say muharebe, war with God, and crimes of this nature. And often these crimes come about with forced confessions under torture. And also they usually target, and as we see also with these executions that you just mentioned, the most marginalized and the most at-risk minorities and segments of the population, such as the Kurdish, for example, Kulbars that were executed. In addition to the executions, we're also seeing essentially mass arrests with very little clarity, so lots of ambiguities, and also much is happening within prisons, again with very little known in terms of the specific details. So there is really grave concern among human rights researchers and advocates about what is to come even further than these past few days that we have seen in terms of the campaign against essentially the people themselves by the regime.
Azadeh, Iran obviously has a long history of carrying out mass executions, including in the 1980s following the Iran-Iraq War. Do you think that there are any similarities to that period now, or is it too early to tell?
There is a fear, for sure, that there are individuals among us that have very much lived that very dark era of Iran, and there is definitely warning about that. It's probably too early to tell if it's going to go to that level of scaling, but there is at this point almost no doubt that we're going to see very dark days when it comes to not only executions, but a lot more. I think the way I see it is the war gave them an excuse to further crack down on internet and also individuals who are on social networks. The bombing of the prison gave them an excuse to start even further chaos and agony among prisoners and the families of prisoners. There is very little known about the whereabouts of many prisoners, especially the more marginalized ones. And also the question of espionage and, sort of labeling espionage for Israel and the U.S., especially Israel, which is, again, like I said, it's a securitized crime. It's an easier one because, again, they use forced confessions, and they have also now are trying to, or have essentially, intensified the punitive measures for these espionage charges. So they're clearly scaling up for something that is not going to is going to be, I think, again, one of Iran's darkest eras for human rights abuses, unfortunately. I really, really hope I am wrong. But this is what we see in terms of trends, unfortunately.
Azadeh, there's an obvious concern about human rights abuses given the past that you just that you just laid out for us there. But how much truth, if any, then, do you think there is to claims that there was widespread cooperation between some Iranian citizens and intelligence services? Are all of these accusations show trials and an attempt at the government to deepen control on the population, or does it reflect at least some degree of reality?
In a country that's under a regime that there is no fair trial, there is no due process, there is no regards for prisoners' right, or very specific targeted campaigns against religious and ethnic minorities, against activists. This is almost an impossible thing to get to, because we are always dealing with essentially sort of falsified charges when it comes to political and national security related issues. And also what the people say is, well, it seems like this level of penetration that Israel had is actually among the ruling elite. So it's actually among the IRGC figures, if anything, and not among ordinary people. So that's sort of the word on the street that you hear from people, sometimes even as a humorous thing, that why are they punishing us if they themselves seem to have been the spies? But yes, that's what I think.
The Iranian president, if we kind of take a look at the state of affairs in general, the Iranian president has suggested that the feeling of national solidarity that we saw to a certain extent during the war with Israel would help bring about domestic reforms. Do you see any signs at all that could happen, or is the focus now for the Iranian government really on an internal crackdown?
Well, that national solidarity is questionable in my view, because that national solidarity actually had nothing to do with the regime. I think the Iranian public managed to communicate effectively that they're against all of this, against their own regime, against the aggression by Israel, and against basically foreign aggression. So I don't, and a nuclear program that's going to put their lives at risk. So yes, there was solidarity, but not around the legitimacy of the regime. And therefore, I do not see sort of a popular campaign that would be around the reform movement, or that some kind of a reform. The Islamic Republic, depending, I think, on how they decide to take their foreign policy, may then do something, some kind of not wholehearted, but symbolic and not with much implication for the people, reforms just to show that they're doing something. But I doubt. I really think right now their focus is this collective punishment campaign. I do think that a long time ago they have given up already on having legitimacy among the public, because literally, socially, politically, economically, there's so many grievances that I think they think their way to survival right now is just to use this aggression as an excuse to up their campaign in terms of repression and free flow of information to the degree that they can, and to instill fear, fear both of domestic repression, but also the fear of foreign aggression. So sort of keeping people in this cautious mode to the degree possible.
Azadeh Pourzand, thank you so much for coming on the show today. That's unfortunately all we have time for.
Thank you.